Hello, fellow YouTubers. Welcome back to My Computer Life King's Quest, or later called King's Quest: Quest for the Crown. Now, the original King's Quest game had a lot of amazing firsts for this game when it originally came out. Before I talk about my experiences, this game was in development in 1983. Now, normally game development back then was a simple one-person development team who simply finished a game in a matter of weeks. King's Quest was made exclusively for the IBM PC Junior. And this game had an 18-minute development cycle with 6 full-time programmers at a cost of $700,000 to make the first King's Quest game. At that time, that price was astronomically high. King's Quest 1 also had an AGI engine, which wasn't called that until King's Quest 2. It was the first animated character game ever made on the PC at the time. The game was, did so many firsts when it originally was released. I remember the first time I saw King's Quest at my cousin's house, I was totally blown away because it seemed almost like a world to me at the time. You had so many different places to go, so many people to talk to. In hindsight, though, King's Quest on the IBM PC Junior didn't do very well because the IBM PC Junior was actually failed, and I had an IBM PC Junior at the time. It failed, so later they ported the game to the Tandy 1000 and standard PCs, and that's when King's Quest 1 originally took off in sales. Little fact that people don't know, that King's Quest 1 was originally ported also to the Sega Master System in 1989 using a verb-noun interface, and there were some changes to the game where, like the boulder where the dagger was, it rolled the opposite way it did on the PC game, but you could still get all 3 treasures in order just like the PC game. Now, the original story for King's Quest 1 was rather simple. The kingdom at the time is suffering from a recent disaster and hardship. King Edward calls on his bravest knight, Sir Graham, to his throne and tells him he has heard of 3 legendary treasures hidden throughout the land that would end the kingdom's troubles. If Graham succeeds, he would become king. Now, later during the 4th re-release of this game, which was on the Apple II, and the 5th re-release, which was later, on standard PCs, the backstory was greatly expanded, where they talked about how this came to be, how this evil witch had tricked them, and how there was no heir to the land, and that if Sir Graham, finished his quest, they decided that Sir Graham would become king and their successor. Now, before I get too deep into my experiences with King's Quest, there's a little known fact that there was a prequel to King's Quest released in 1980. It was called Wizard and the Princess. It was released on the Apple II and the Apple II Plus. This game was the first game ever to have color graphics, first adventure game, ever have color graphics, and went on to sell over 60,000 copies at the time. It was the little known prequel. And how you know that it's tied into King's Quest was, it was also known as Adventure in Cernia, which later in King's Quest V, they went back to the land and they called it the Kingdom of Cernia. So that's how they're tied in together. But I remember the original King's Quest game being one of my favorite PC games, not only because it had a lot of colors at the time, and it had animated characters, which I'd never seen before in a PC game, but also you could type things in to interact. Now, of course, back then on the PC, they were very limited. Things you thought would were logically in the game weren't. Sometimes it was frustrating to type the right thing to get to do what you wanted to. The clues in the game were very vague, so a lot of times you would spend hours trying to find something. But it was such a, at the time, compared to any other game, such a rich, full world. So many different characters, just a well thought out game that was a lot of fun. And I fell in love with that game. Because of that game, I went on to play the later, versions of King's Quest and loved all of them. Now, Telltale Games this year was it was this year. They are now currently making a reboot of the King's Quest series. So we'll see how different that'll be from the original. I'm excited that they're going back to King's Quest. You just worry that because Roberta Williams is not involved, how much the heart will be in the series. And also, if you did want to play the original King's Quest for free, it is in the Chrome store. If you have the Chrome browser, you can simply play it. There's also a DOSBox program in the Chrome store that will allow you to play the old DOS PC games also. But it was just one of those first games that came out that if you weren't around at the time, you wouldn't know how unbelievably ambitious and how unbelievably great King's Quest game was. It was a game at the time that totally blew me away. Going back to it, of course, there's a lot of nostalgia when I go back and play that game. But did you ever play King's Quest? And tell me your experience. Did you love the game? Did you not love the game? Did you find the game later on? Because, I mean, the game was ported basically to everything. In 1990, they did do a reboot graphically of the series and re-released them again. So, I'd love to hear your guys' comments below. So, that's all for now, guys. So, till the next time I make a video.